over here.
What's up, everybody? Thanks for joining the Anthem Community Roundtable today on Wednesday. I'm here with our pastors from Anthem Community Church. We've got Omar, John, and Marty.
Hello.
My name's Josh. Thanks for joining us once again. We do this once a week on Wednesdays in the afternoon. And yes, we meet again. Yes, we do, Alan. Thank you.
Like
appreciate that. What's up, Elise? Good to see you. Omar, it's good to see you in here.
Elise, what do you want us to talk about?
Allie's in here.
Tell Elise and Allie what should we talk about?
Any topics you want us to talk about?
What should we talk about?
Just a small follow-up. I thought it was kind of interesting. We were talking about the Pope last week, and I was watching one of the pastors of the church I used to go to, and he was kind of talking about the audience that he had, 1.7 billion people, and why the gospel wasn't ever presented on the television. I thought that was an interesting take.
That's a good point.
I mean, you've got a man who stands for a belief system, and
the church response.
You would think that would be an open forum to, especially on television, right? I mean, one of the biggest resources that we have to get information out, and was not used too much.
I saw a really interesting cartoon that just to give him to cut him some slack is I saw this cartoon and it had an interviewer that was interviewing the Pope, and this guy was like saying, "Oh, so what do you think about it's all global warming?" So he's got global warming. He's got the mic out in his hand. He's like, "Oh yeah, let's hear everything he has to say about that." And then he's talking about religious freedom, and the reporter's got his back, and he's like over here talking about. So whenever the Pope's talking about religious freedom of expression, and all that stuff that the media just didn't want to cover at all.
Wow.
So we heard what the media wanted us to hear about what the Pope was saying.
Yeah.
And,
very interesting.
That's an interesting thing to remember, that we are not getting the entirety of what he was trying to get across.
Sure.
So.
Well, it was also hard to understand him when he did speak. The speeches that I did see, I was like, what? I'm trying to understand. He spoke really slow. I mean, obviously English isn't his first language, but I did find.
14.
Yeah. So I found it a little.
We've got we've got another topic because I think the Pope. We've run that one out. We've certainly run that one out. But
they said abortion. I saw abortion.
Well, or the school board meeting. That I'll hand this over to John. He's going to talk to us a little bit about the school board meeting.
School board meeting.
What happened, John?
Man, what do we want to talk about here? What's the question?
I didn't go.
What was the topic?
I didn't go.
The topic was there's several different pieces of legislation that are coming up to change the way and when and how we educate our children about sexual stuff in schools. Currently, we have a system that teaches 5th graders and then high school students a unit class that's like 3 weeks long, and there's a committee that is made up of 6 people that evaluates the curriculum the school board chooses. So there's a couple things that are tied up in here. One is right now we have a system where you have to opt in to receive that education, so they have to have a permission slip that goes home. Parents have to sign it. They have to be aware that, hey, we're going to be talking to our 5th graders about the sensitive topics. So they're trying to encourage parental influence and participation in that. And there is a movement that's trying to get them to
but
say
this is not.
opt-out.
None of that's new. So the ability to be able to opt out of your child. So what's
they
the
were saying
the
that they were going to switch it to saying that everybody was going to get it and you had to opt out. And the problem was that is of notification, and then in states that there is an
you have to opt out instead of opt in.
Right.
Wow.
So they're trying to flip that around so that it would just be. The other thing they're trying to do is to have it be sexual education given only by specialists. Like, it couldn't be coach. It would be people from the real smart people who knew how to push the newest and greatest agenda.
Now, were they specific? Were they specific on the curriculum? Is it going to be? Does it involve homosexuality? Does it involve transgender?
These are the issues that are being brought up right now. Right now, the current curriculum that they've just put into place doesn't get a whole lot of details in gender identity. it is a curriculum that was evaluated by teachers, that was presented by the district, and then it was given to this committee to evaluate and to approve and then send back to the district. What they're trying to do is get the committee to create the curriculum. And then, of course, what was the question?
I was just saying that the curriculum is intense, number one, but it's available online.
And you can read it.
Right, but they're trying to alter the curriculum, obviously, to get more broad and more detailed and more normalizing these new and these new choices. And they're also trying to, the way that the Power to Parent people were putting it was they were trying to make it more pleasure-based and just the freedom of sexual expression being a natural thing.
The committee would be funded by Planned Parenthood?
Well, currently the committee has someone that was a long-term Planned Parenthood employee and then another ACLU employee. The committee, according to Power to Parent, is split up between three people who are saying that we need to have early and everything, and it needs to be freedom of sexual expression needs to be normalized completely in whatever kind of natural way that you feel that you want to express yourself sexually. And then you have...
If you're a rapist, you should be able to express yourself as a rapist.
Well, they wouldn't, I don't think, approve an assault.
But
where's the line? The line is, that's interesting. I think consensual is the way that they're putting it, but clearly not biblical, and there's not a whole lot of conversation about restraining your natural impulses. And we come from
But why would they?
No, exactly.
This is not coming from a Christian standpoint. It's not coming from a biblical worldview. The scriptures that we read and study tell us this. They tell us not to be surprised by this. We're not going to be friends with the world. The world's not going to get where we're coming from. So this is not something that we should be surprised by. We need to be aware of it, obviously. To me, the more of the issue is what are they saying about what is normal, the transgender stuff, the homosexual stuff, that kind of stuff. Because there's a lot of parents who don't want their kids receiving any sex education whatsoever. They don't want to. They don't want their kids to get it at home. They don't want their kids to get it at school. They don't want their kids to get it at church. Because my experience has been in church, whenever you try to talk about sexual things at church, there's always going to be some parents who get upset, and they just don't want any conversation about it at all, and ignoring it is not the answer either. But obviously going all the way over and saying it's only based on pleasure and do whatever you want, however you want, as long as it's consensual, that's not a...
And safe. You gotta make sure you're not transmitting diseases, because we're now enlightened and we're educated.
Right. So that's not it either.
I think the focus of last night was really, at least the people that were there to talk about and to say, hey, we need to state that the opt-in is the way to go here, is because we don't want somebody getting in the way of us and our children. Like, we have the right. We have the right as parents to dictate, even if I don't agree with you. My right is to educate my children in the way that I see.
Well, yes,
it's my child and not the state's child.
And here's what's concerning. What's concerning is it should never be the government or school district telling us what they're going to teach, because then it becomes them in control of whatever it is.
Well, it's interesting that you make that point, because there was several people that were sex education teachers or specialists that spoke in favor of retaining an opt-in, and there were several that spoke against that. And the people that spoke in favor of a more liberal, and everybody's going to get it, if you don't want it, you have to specify that. Her perspective was one of the more controversial of the night, because she was a professor at UNLV, and she presented her side as the scientific-based, the educated perspective, and the educated perspective was put forth as the better one, since we know better about all of these things that you traditional people don't agree with. Your belief system is getting in the way of true education, and that to me really kind of summed up the nugget of the fight, because we're saying that your education and your scientific or whatever belief system that you're trying to push on us is just as bad as us trying to push our belief system on you. So you're establishing a belief system that is every bit as much of a religion, a philosophy of life, a whatever, as the Christian worldview. So you're establishing a worldview that you're saying has to be ascribed to, and we're going to.
Yeah, and from the scientific standpoint, they have their why, and where I think that we fail pretty badly at as Christians is we don't have our why. We'll state what we're for, what we're against, but we're not very good at telling why and coming up with those things based off it. And when you talk about the science stuff, it doesn't help when you got Christians all over the world saying the world's going to end because of an eclipse. And so this is like, okay, these are the people. Okay, this is. It's
a really scary shadow, man.
It's a really scary shadow. And then I even looked at, okay, this eclipse. Only a part of the world saw it. It was only in its heightened part in one section, and it's just that's the part. From a faith standpoint, from a Christian standpoint, from a biblical standpoint, we need to make sure that we're okay. This is why. This is why we think that a family is better with a husband and a wife. This is why we think it's better to not be that sex should only be between a husband and a wife in a married covenant relationship, and that everything else should be abstained from. Here's why: because if we were able to snap our fingers and remove if the only sex that happened in the world was between two committed, loving people, man and wife, in a marriage relationship, and that was the only sex that happened in the world, just think about all of the problems in the world that would be eliminated.
Yeah,
the world would literally be a different place. That's the kind of stuff that we need to be talking about. Those are the kinds that we need to be saying, instead of jumping on this thing saying, well, you shouldn't tell me what to believe, and you should. Here's
what's
like
interesting.
A schoolyard argument.
Here's what's interesting. So
Whitney says, boom.
Yeah, when you go back to what you were saying, well, let's do it for education. For education's sake, we need to present this so that kids are educated. Well, why not present the whole truth? So why not do the scientific and the religious part?
Let's talk about that, because our side can't be truth. Okay, so the perspective from the people in the academic world that are on the other side of the argument is that we are deceiving because we're not embracing what's natural. Okay, and we want to put restrictions and self-control, and we want to inhibit natural impulses in our sexual life because we've been told that having proper boundaries on those urges is the way that God wants us to be healthy. It's the way that civilization is stabilized through the family unit. It's the way that diseases don't get spread. It's just a better way of life that, from their perspective, that is like tyrannical, and it doesn't allow them to express themselves and to be who they are because their identity is tied up in their sexuality. And that's an interesting thing.
I think there's two sides, though. We have our side as well. So why is it that, for whatever reason, we can't present all the truth?
Because it's a separation.
No one's going to go to that. No one's going to go to that class.
You can't talk about religion. You can't talk about religion in school. Yeah, but we can talk about a pagan, hypersexual, secular humanist perspective, aka religion, and call it education because it's the current,
Well, your side comes from the Bible, religious texts, and that's just not allowed.
Right, and
well, it's not. It's allowed in some places, and people are willing to have that conversation. But what it is it's not believed. It's not taken as truth. It's not truth to them. And again, as Christians, we shouldn't be surprised by that. We should not. Right.
And last night was not about. I don't think that there was a real big belief in the room that we, as a kind of traditional marriage, traditional conservative sexuality side of this argument, I don't think we really believe that we're going to turn the tide of what sexual education comes. Obviously we have this big battle brewing over the First Amendment, freedom of expression of worship and freedom of religion and freedom to believe what you want to believe, and the 14th Amendment and the non-discrimination against people. and that's going to have to get played out in the courts to figure out how we're going to have reasonable accommodations for my lack of acceptance of that as a healthy lifestyle or something that I want taught to my child as a healthy, normal lifestyle.
I think
and we're going
to
to have to figure that out.
Yeah.
So that's why we were so big in last night about really what people were pushing was opt-in. We want to have the freedom to say, thank you very much for when you're getting on these controversial subjects. I understand that we have a deep division of what is appropriate.
Correct.
I think that I need to have the right to get in between you and my child. And I don't think that that's too much to ask.
That is not.
Yeah. And to be able to look
that
at
needs
the
to be
curriculum.
demanded. That is something we have to demand.
Yeah. And as you look at the curriculum, I'm not necessarily against teaching my daughter about transgender and homosexuality. That's not the point.
You're not going to have a choice. You're going to have to address these
we
issues.
have to address that. We have to address it because that is the reality of what's going on.
Right. But how you shape that conversation,
how you shape that conversation
is extremely important.
Yes.
So that it's delivered in the context of the gospel.
Yes. Yeah. And Ali's saying I want to be the one to do that, obviously, and I agree with that. We should have the right to be able to do that. And
I think one of the other points, too, that's funny is Elise had brought up the point that sexual expression will be taught in kindergarten, first grade, like at the lower levels. And yet, we got to be 18 to vote. We got to be, 21 to smoke or drink. Or, we've got some age limitations and restrictions on how to live, right? As far as law goes, we don't have that sexually. Seems a little weird. I mean, because anybody that is dealing with a child sexually is considered a pedophile. There's laws against that. There are things that try and protect children, and some of those things could be a smoking law or a drinking law. And age is how we control that.
Well, and I would say, without question, one of the biggest mistakes parents make with their children is not talking to their children about sex.
Absolutely.
I mean, that is, we wait. We take them to Disneyland when they're 3, and wait till we talk to them about sex when they're 15. We should invert that a little bit. We probably need to be talking about other things when they're a whole lot younger, and then wait till they get older to be able to experience some of the things that we do. So we get that really mixed up. And there are all the stats out there now that the average person experiences their first experience from porn on the internet when they're 10 years old. I mean, so if you're going to wait till your kid gets to be 12 or 13 or 14, you're not too late. You're too late by about 5 years. Half a decade late.
Yeah, that's huge.
Absolutely. Well, and when you had brought up Planned Parenthood, as because you have to look at who's going to be putting this curriculum together, and then you mentioned Planned Parenthood.
Yeah, Planned Parenthood and ACLU, both of them are very agenda driven. And the thing that's hard about this is that they really think that they're doing what's best. They really think that they're trying to make society a better place. So when you get in front of somebody like that and you're saying, man, I really see that there's nothing but evil and destruction as a result of following your way of doing these things. Because
at the very least, lots and lots of pain.
Lots and lots of pain.
Pain and disease. Evil and destruction. Ultimately, we know that.
I don't think that's probably the lead. I would say, hey, bro, what's going on? I'm so glad you're advocating evil and destruction. But at the end of the day, we know that this is where it's coming from.
Yeah, pain and disease and confusion, absolutely.
Yeah, I wouldn't say, hey, what's up, envoy of Satan? It's so good to see you.
Isaac says that living here in Sin City, causes him to have to provocatively discuss things with his children. Basically just there's nothing stopping.
And I love the fact that we live here because
proactively. Sorry.
I love the fact that we. That's
Wait, what did you say?
The billboards take care of the provocative part.
Right.
It's true. Sorry about that, Isaac.
No, I think there's definitely the advantages being a parent in Las Vegas, because when you're a parent in Las Vegas, I think for parents that care and our parents are engaged in their especially their young teenagers and older teenagers' life, because of where we live, we are so in tune with what's out there, what's down the street, and so we're very protective of that. But I also lived 15 years in a place of about 100,000, in the South where parents are juked into thinking all of the stuff that's happening in Vegas isn't happening in their town. When it is happening in their town, it's just not on a billboard.
Right.
And so parents are so naive, and they say, oh, all of our kids are just out in the woods, and it's just a bunch of church kids, and they're like sitting around the campfire praying and singing songs to Jesus.
Right.
And that's not what's happening.
Right.
And yeah, God might be mentioned, but so the fact that we live here, it does force us to do that. It does force us. So I think that's an advantage. I don't see that as a
more aware.
Makes us more aware.
We can't.
That's right.
We can't say it's not happening here.
Yes.
We just there's no hiding it.
No, but if you say it's not happening somewhere else, that's foolish as well. And I say this all the time. What's the difference between Las Vegas and Birmingham, Alabama? The biggest difference is that Las Vegas markets sin, Birmingham, Alabama doesn't. But the same stuff is going on.
Should I say Roll Tide?
Well, you can, but this is probably not the year to say that.
No, not the right year. One of the most heart-wrenching things last night that kind of summed up some of the difficulty in the debate is there was a young girl who came up and testified and was talking about how she was either, I don't know how you get forced to drink a lot, but she was brought into an environment where she drank a lot and then was sexually assaulted. And she was very pointed in her choice of words as to how she was describing it, and she kept going back to how if there was more education, that she would have had other words to understand what was happening to her, or this guy that was assaulting her would have not done that. And at least that's the best that I could come up with what she was trying to say. She's like, we need to have more sex education because, this guy that was getting me drunk and raping me didn't know what he was doing, or he didn't know it was wrong. Well, he wasn't educated. Well, it didn't make a whole lot of sense to me, but the thing is that this young woman was very, very hurt, and she was very, very crushed, and she was crying out for some way for her to get help. And the way that she was trying to get help was from this education. And man, it's like she's looking for the wrong answer.
Well, no, she's looking for education. The answer is a Christian education, a understanding of she's created by God and He's created these things, and there's a wrong way and a right way to live her life. That's what's missing in her life. Nobody's taught her that. Nobody's taught her the value of who she is. Nobody's taught her that this is wrong, or nobody's taught her if you don't want to get hit with a beer bottle, don't go where they're throwing them. I mean, this is the stuff that's missing in their life. And to come in and think that, if I'd have had this more of this education about this when I was in the 5th grade, that wouldn't have happened.
Or like the guy didn't know what he was doing was wrong, and he would have cared one way or the other.
Yeah,
the sex education classes that hand out the condoms. Like, really? I mean, how does that work? So yeah, don't have sex and abstain from sex. But if you do, here's some condoms to help you with that.
And you got science going against that position too. You talk about where you have more liberal policies on showing and talking about specific behaviors. There's a correlation between experience and expression of those behaviors when education is more detailed in a younger age. If you're going to talk about masturbation, you're going to talk about how to place on condoms, and now we can make sex safe. You might be safe from, 1 or 2 types of disease. You might be maybe safe, because we all know condoms are not 100% safe. You might be safe from impregnation. But what they don't talk about is they don't talk about the biochemical, emotional response that you have when you engage in intercourse with somebody. You don't talk about the way God's designed sex to be between a loving husband and wife as a forever bond, that when those bonds are broken, have really, really deep emotional scars.
It's a watered-down morality. That's what it is. It's watered-down morality. And how is that effective? How is watered-down morality effective?
Because it destroys the family. It destroys...
And that's the problem.
The restraint on the natural tendencies of our flesh. And if we see this in any other light other than, hey, we're engaged in a spiritual war and we have an enemy, then it just becomes crazy. But once you put it in the proper context and you realize that literally there is deception from dark and depraved minds, that are trying to do what makes them feel good about themselves outside of an identity in God who created them. And all they want to, you don't know who I am. You're trying to tell me that I can't express myself. If I can't express myself sexually, then I cannot be who I am. So your identity is wrapped up in who you get naked and kiss with. This is, your identity is so much more than that.
Well, it goes into, your identity being wrapped up into, Charles Manson or any of these other murderers, that are out there. Your identity, you could say, well, you don't understand me. I have to murder people. I have to, it just goes on. It's just the domino effect. It's, one thing falls, the next thing falls, the next thing falls, and it would fit for all sides, not just a sexual side. Very interesting. Well, that was fun.
Sure.
What did anybody else ask?
That was good. I think if we did another, we'd be here for like another 45 minutes. Oh. But one of them was
Omar's ready to quit.
Oh. No. What I'm saying is one of the question was abortion.
Oh.
Our stance.
Yeah, let's don't talk about that.
Yeah, so I'm saying
not today. We'll talk about
not
it another
today.
point.
Of course.
Well, yeah, but I think that's a good.
Yeah, that's definitely a different.
That's a good topic
that's a good
that we
Wednesday
can't
topic
tackle out right
today.
now. But that was one of the things that was brought up.
No, very interesting.
Murder.
Okay.
One word, yeah.
Tackled.
Would you like to hold this? All right, guys. Well, we're gonna hit it. Thanks for joining us here at Anthem Community Church's weekly roundtable. We'll see you next Wednesday at 3. Again, my name is Josh. This is Marty, John, and Omar sitting next to me. We appreciate you guys joining us. If you want to check us out, go to our Facebook page, Anthem Community Church. You can also go to our website, ouracc.org. That's ouracc.org. And we've got more resources and things, sermons and whatnot that you guys can watch. We appreciate you joining us. We'll see you next time.